Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where our workplace relationships are like a sitcom, complete with quirky characters, awkward moments, and, a laugh track every time the boss makes a dad joke. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I hope B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Did you know that a quarter of tech startups fail due to team issues? Add in founding team issues, mishires, those who stick together while just hating each other's guts, and that number jumps as high as 60%. Ouch. That's right, more than half. If you want to avoid being part of that nasty statistic, stick around. Team dynamics in tech startups can be absolutely make or break in your company's success. How do we build high-performing teams that drive business to new heights? It's easy to say, but if it was easy to do, then it wouldn't consistently be one of the top factors in company failures. Common challenges include conflict among co-founders, happens a lot. Knowledge silos, happens all the time. High turnover rates, lack of communication, misalignment of vision and goals, a lack of trust, a homogeneous team culture that stifles innovation. And if that isn't enough, you get in startup mode in early stage, say under 10 million in revenue, or especially venture founded companies, there is a tremendous pressure to deliver quickly. Move fast, break things, ready, fire, aim. And that pace often leads to cutting corners in team development, resulting in a fractured team that struggles to collaborate effectively. Without cohesive, high-performing team, even the most innovative ideas can fail to take off, which is sad, but it's true. So how do we overcome these challenges and build a team that not only survives, but conquers? Let's explore 3 key elements that are crucial for fostering a collaborative and productive team culture. The first is a foundation of trust. The circle of trust. Remember the movie? It's what everything else is built on. Trust encourages open communication, reduces conflicts, and fosters a sense of safety where team members feel comfortable taking risks and sharing ideas. They're not afraid to go out there and experiment and try and fail and not have all the answers. Trust can be nurtured through transparency, reliability, and consistent support. The biggest trust killer, it's us, founders, leaders, and our push to move fast and not break things, even though we say it's to move fast and break things. We just want to move fast and everything work great. It's really easy to trample on other people's ideas and do that a few times and the team gets quiet or they move on. So we'll go deeper into team killers in the next video. But the second element for high performing teams is open communication built on that foundation of trust. Clear and effective communication is absolutely vital. So encourage regular check-ins, use collaborative tools. We've talked about some of those on the podcast. Create an environment where feedback is welcomed and acted upon. It's not just like welcomed and stuck in a drawer somewhere or forgotten or deleted in an email. This is dependent on that foundation of trust. Good communication ensures that everyone is aligned with the company goals and aware of their roles and responsibilities. How does what they do fit into the bigger picture, the goal, the vision of the company? The most important factor here is the why. We got to know why. They need to know why. Why are we doing something a certain way? Or why are we doing it at all? Why does it matter? Why is it important? And that why has to be aligned with the vision, mission, goals, and purpose of the company. People can deal with the what and the how. They can deal with a lot if they understand and buy into the why. And as leaders, that's our responsibility. We have to deliver that why to them. The third is diversity. Embrace diversity in your team. And I talk about this a lot. And I don't just mean appearance. That's one small piece of it. But diverse teams bring a variety of perspectives and solutions, driving innovation and creativity. Diversity in skills and experience, but also in backgrounds, cultures, ways of thinking. A diverse team can adapt better to challenges and seize new opportunities. Again, who owns that? Hey, it's us as leaders. We own that one. And here is the number one strategy for creating a high performing team in tech startups. It kind of brings them all together. It's fostering a culture of continuous learning and development. Not just talking about it, but really doing that. Investing in a team's growth and skill development. It pays huge, huge dividends. A foundation of trust allows people to be open about knowledge or skill gaps instead of trying to cover them up. You've probably been in those kinds of situations where somebody doesn't want to say they don't know, but they don't know or they don't have the skill. And so we want to make sure that they do have those skills. We have to have that foundation of trust. That's where it starts. That communication allows productive conversations about improving and sharing ideas. And diversity brings in those different perspectives or lenses through which to view things. It also means that your superpower is different than mine. And that's really, really helpful because together we're unstoppable. And use the analogy of, 5 robots come together to make one super robot. We'll leave that one alone. But, if you're an engineer, you probably know. But our success is our own, and it is also dependent on each other. All for one and one for all. To sum up, building a high-performing team in a tech startup hinges on trust, communication, and diversity, and culminates in a culture of continuous learning and constant development. And those elements can transform your team into a powerhouse that drives your startup success. Our expert guest last week was Darius Lahutafard, a best-selling author and pioneer of the MEDIC sales methodology. We talked about transitioning from a functional role to CEO, mistakes along the way, and of course, sales. So if you want to boost revenue without pain, check out MEDIC in this episode. Our founder last Tuesday was Eli Goodman, co-founder and CEO of Datos. We talked about behavioral analytics with privacy-compliant data sets, marketing in a cookieless future, and it's coming, and winning the hearts and minds of prospects. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and check them out. My guest today is Albert Owusu-Asare, co-founder and CEO of Cadana. He is revolutionizing global payroll in emerging markets, facilitating over $150 million in payments since 2021. An immigrant from Ghana with a decade in Fintech, he started at Goldman Sachs, contributing to the Apple Card launch, and later served as the CTO of Esusu, a Fintech platform aiding renters in building credit. Very cool stuff. Welcome someone who is making international payments fast and easy for companies and for team members. Albert Owusu-Asare. Hey, Albert, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background. You share your journey from Ghana to the US and how your background influenced your career in fintech.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Ghana, in the middle of Ghana, in a city called Kumasi. And around 17 years, I was fortunate enough to write the SATs. I got something called the African Scholarship to a liberal arts institution in Iowa, of all places, called Grinnell. And so 17 years old, first time on a plane, first time outside of my country, I end up in Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Des Moines. I like to say the taxi ride from Des Moines to my college was actually pretty interesting, right? Because it's Iowa, cornfields. Like, this is not the America I signed up for. But long story short, from that point onwards, I was able to really, just get my degrees in physics, computer science, went on to Goldman Sachs, and then the rest followed from there. But it's really just that background, I think, that has influenced a lot of what I do today.
That's great. So how did your time at Goldman Sachs and then you were chief technology officer at Esusu, I mean, how did your work there influence your vision for Cadana?
Yeah. So I was at Grinnell. I was on track to just go to do a PhD. My specification was just astrophysics. And in the summer of college, a recruiter reached out from Goldman and said, "Hey, we have a summer internship. So why don't you try it out?" And so I went to New York for 3 months, and it was really there where I was just very fascinated, right? Just by the world of finance, the way that money moves. And things of that nature. So I just decided to go back. And as an engineer, I was really part of the team at the time. We were building Marcus, which is the consumer arm of the business, and got to learn a lot about the lending business, savings, with credit cards. And so that's sort of where I started learning about how underwriting works and how things of that nature also work. But fast forward, after being there for a little bit, I wanted to dabble into something a little bit more on the earlier side, startups. And I got a call from the CEO of my previous company, Esusu, and joined them as a CTO. But what was fascinating there is another great company, mission driven. But what was fascinating there was I was a CTO. I built all of these engineering departments. We were paying people from all over the world, Jeff. So there were folks from Pakistan, South America, Africa, and they were very smart. They were exciting to work with, but they were struggling in how to get paid. Some of them were borrowing their friends' PayPal accounts. Some of them had transfers going through Swift. We would pay them and they would be like $50, $60 less. And so it really drew my attention to, hey, if these brilliant people around the world have found a job, getting paid shouldn't be the hardest part of that flow. So that's sort of where the interest in trying to solve that problem started.
That's fantastic. And you're exactly right. The fees are extremely high and it's difficult for employees, for
Yes.
sure. And just the delay in payments, trying to figure that out, the fees. But then I think it's also hard for employers and figuring out,
Yes.
they hire somebody in another country and like, what do we do? Like PayPal? Do we
Yeah.
do, Wise? How do we even handle this?
Yeah, what I found is employers are not here trying to think about how do I squeeze my employees, right? Most of them have the best intentions. In fact, what employers want is a ubiquitous pay experience. They really want to give the same benefits if they could to the employees in the US or Europe, to all of these folks in emerging markets. But what was lacking, Jeff, is the infrastructure to allow them to do so, right? And so we saw that as a challenge. And the promise of global work or remote work is to create this perception that borders don't exist, right? The promise is really you can find brilliant people around the world. Talent is evenly distributed. But the reality, Jeff, is that there are borders, there are jurisdictions, there are tax laws, and over 19,000 of them around the world. And so how do you even understand that? Who do you trust? How do you make sure that when you pay someone in South Africa, you're not breaking some law that you don't know about? So that's sort of where a company like us comes in to help employers navigate these types of issues.
That's super helpful. And you're exactly right. I mean, the tax jurisdictions in different countries and so many laws. Yeah. One, how could we ever know what they all are? But then two, making sure that we're compliant is incredibly difficult. So I think that's really interesting that that's a piece that you guys tackle and something that you do. You're compliant in how many countries now?
Yeah. The way you want to think about our business is we like to think about ourselves as a network of networks. And we do that on three dimensions. Nice. We have a network of payment infrastructure. That's very straightforward. How do I get the money to get into the external bank account? And then we've built a network of compliance infrastructure. Think about that as a combination of technology, expertise, literally humans that our customers can talk to around the world. So today we're able to move money to as many as 200 plus countries. And in about 40 of those countries, we're also able to do more than just move money, but support folks with, just compliance and benefits and things of that sort. And we're gradually hoping that we can go from that 40 to even more in the next couple of years.
That's huge. And there are probably people listening and they're like, I didn't know there were 200 companies. I didn't know there were 200 countries.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, right? And this is South America. This is Southeast Asia, Africa. Emerging markets, Jeff, are just super interesting. Young demographics, brilliant people, and they span all of these countries that I just mentioned.
That's great. So how is it that the high remittance fees and payment delays really affect workers in emerging
Yes.
markets? I mean, it's different than we think of it here. If something's delayed a day or two.
That's a great question, Jeff. And this is something that I think employers also appreciate when we help them understand. And we did a survey. We basically went around the thousands of people we pay in emerging markets, and we said, when you get paid, what do you use your money for? And Jeff, trust me, they're not upgrading their apartments or buying the latest BMW, right? They are
Right.
on average taking care of 5 family members in emerging markets,
Wow.
right? So this means that when you delay someone's salary, that means school fees are delayed, right? It means an elderly person in the family that was not able to access medical care will not be able to do so. It's like real impactful things. And so I think the time delays are super important. The other thing is in emerging markets, what I like to tell our customers are it's not just the quantum of money, but the velocity of money matters, right? Because when you have this dependency and the money doesn't actually get there a day faster, it could actually mean dire things for the people that are depending on it. And so the challenges are real. And when we zoom out just out of the, I think that the tangible, impactful challenges, it quite honestly doesn't feel good when you're in the same company and your colleague in Romania got paid. You're like, hey, you're just chatting with them on Slack. Like, I got paid. I'm going to wherever. I'm going to Italy for the weekend. And you're just like, why is my money not in yet? Right. And so it's this
Right.
weird thing where you feel second place. You feel we're on the same team. We contribute the same amount. Why am I having a different pay experience, right, than the colleagues that I work with?
Right. Yeah. But back when you were at Goldman Sachs, you worked on the Apple Card. And how did that shape
Yes.
your approach to building financial products at Cadana?
Yeah, I think without getting too much into the specifics, yeah, a few things that taught me was just um, partnerships, could work, right? You think about this big company that has all of these resources, still needing some help, right, behind the scenes to partner with another bank to basically facilitate that. So it taught me just high level lessons of when we are trying to build Cadana, there are things that we can build ourselves, and there are things that we have to rely on other people for. And just being able to identify that, build versus buy and partner was, I think, a key lesson. But the other thing too, it taught me was just real, customer centricity. Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because it's really this idea of just empathy. How can you empathize with the customer? When someone comes in and applies for a card, and there's probably a reason for them to do so. How do you get a response back to them faster? Customer support. When you're actually using your card and it's not working, and you need help at that point in time, how do you make sure that you're giving people those help? So I think from a macro perspective, those were the learnings. And then on the micro, we learned a lot about just distributed systems. These are large systems moving large amounts of money. How do you make sure that you're building them for scale? How do you make sure that you can even scale the teams that are supporting those kinds of systems? And so we brought a lot of those learnings to Cadana, and we were able to, I think, make some really impactful architectural decisions from day one, if that all makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you really have built it to scale. I mean, already 150 million in payments to date. I mean, that's pretty impressive. What strategies did you use? What's been most effective to achieve that
Yes.
milestone?
We like to think about, especially with the way that we're building out the payments feature, is how can we make localized payments global? So that means, when you have things like Swift, it's really just connecting banks in this weird chain. But at the end of the day, there are these experts on the ground, right, that actually know how to do local money movement. And so what we've done is we've went to these countries. We've went to Ghana, we've gone to Pakistan, Brazil, and we've literally found the Stripe equivalents in those countries, and we've hooked into them directly. So what that allows you to do is that when money is moving, you're able to really manage treasury. You're able to manage the different FX parts of the movement. but the last mile is happening right on the ground versus just going through some network of banks. And then every time you remove an intermediary from a global payments flow, you're getting speed increments and you're getting fee benefits. And so it's just really tapping into local networks, I think is step one. And then a big part of this is honestly just financial operations. A lot of these countries have very illiquid currencies, which means even FX is an issue. So how do you make sure that you're managing your FX and your treasury better? This is where we rely on teams that we've built and people that we've hired to bring that expertise in-house. And so altogether, what that means is that the talent gets a very localized experience, even though they're working for an American company. I'll just give you a concrete example of this. When we started, it was mind blowing to us that payments were not going into things like M-PESA. And Jeff, you might be familiar, but M-PESA, think about it as like your Verizon or your T-Mobile. That's basically your bank. In most places in Africa, you go to the restaurant, you're paying with your M-PESA account. So why am I not receiving my salary directly to this thing that I'm using every day? So that's an example of us thinking through that. And now we connect to those local rails, not just banks. We're connecting to the telecommunication networks and making sure that people can cash out their salaries. One thing too we do, for example, is you can actually say move 60% of my income to my bank, 40% to M-PESA. We're giving flexibility to the user. So all of that, I think, accumulates into unparalleled talent experience. When we get a lot of referrals because they're just like, Cadana came in and they basically made my life better. And then our customers bring in other customers. And then when you do that, it compounds to that 150 million plus payments volume that you mentioned.
That's really, really smart. And I think it's very astute to think about, how people are using money, how do they pay, what is their bank? And
Yes.
a lot of people probably don't realize that is the case. Is cell phones are essentially like debit cards, and you're using those for payments and everything else. So, I mean, it makes sense to have your direct deposit go right there to your phone account.
It does. And Jeff, I'm not sure if you use Venmo or Cash App or any of those. Do you do that today?
My wife does a lot for online shopping and Facebook Marketplace and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you realize with these systems is that where consumers are spending a lot of time has changed, right, in the last 100 years, right? Like people used to get paid through cash and then checks, and then now we have digital banking. But I think the fundamental flaw with the payroll architecture is there's an assumption we haven't decoupled the employee pay experience from the HR admin pay experience, right? There's this assumption that you'll get paid and it has to go into your Wells Fargo. But what if I wanted to go into my Cash App, right? Why could I not tell you which of these modes where it could be stable coins, right? It could be whatever.
Sure.
Your job is to pay me $5,000 and my job is to basically articulate where I want to receive that money. And I think that decoupling hasn't happened. And infrastructure like Cadana, I think hopefully will set the course for what payroll systems could look like in the future.
Hey, that's really, really smart to think about that. Most of the payroll systems, a lot of them you can split, direct deposit in between, say, two bank accounts.
Yes.
But that's the extent of the options. It's do you want it, part in checking and part in savings? But there really aren't other options outside of that. But that's really interesting to think about, just a broader picture of how could it work? What are ways that would be nice for employees to be able to, have options?
Yeah. And I think historically we've looked at the HR tech space as automation of HR admin workflows. Right. Whenever you see a payroll company, it's like, okay, the HR admin is going through some pain and we're going to take those workflows, we're going to bring it into the digital realm. And then obviously cloud came along and it was a story of how can we bring that software into the cloud. But now, Jeff, I think that a lot of SaaS companies are realizing that consumer expectations are really high. You can click a button and order an Uber right in front of your house. You can get movies on demand on like Netflix, right? So the user expectation is increasingly high. And so my big bet, I think, is that payroll companies are actually going to dabble more into consumer finance than we see today. And that's sort of the bet that we're making with the company, right? If you think about payroll, this is where the show starts, right? Like, even if you're going to use a Chime or Wells Fargo, the money has to leave your whatever ADP before it gets there. So what if ADP starts embedding a lot of these consumer finance flows, right? That I think is the future and the next iteration of what payroll software could look like.
Ready to future-proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed for SaaS founders and C-suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on-demand fractional C-suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter, not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. It's free, and we'll pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That is where leaders evolve and companies transform. That's interesting to think about, but you're exactly right that HR systems were really built for HR people. They're built for the company, not for the consumer. And so that next wave really being much more consumer centric or employee centric, it just makes sense.
I think so. And we're seeing a lot of this, right? I think even today, you're seeing, well, when you go to Target, you're seeing that they are creating their own wallet and they want you to use that as an option. So I think that a lot of folks are understanding that the consumer experience, whether you're paying or receiving money, can be better. And I think it's getting to be a little bit more embedded in places you never think that it would be. So it's really, I think, the talent experience, I think, should be a key differentiation. And especially for emerging markets, we have an open playing field. There's, the infrastructure is not as developed. So we see our strategy as, let's build that infrastructure. Let's connect payroll to consumer finance experiences. And then maybe we can actually monetize and even make money, right, on that consumer side of the house as well.
Yeah. So what have been some of the biggest challenges in building Cadana?
The challenges really is about how do you create the same pay experience in Romania as you would in Ivory Coast. And the problems of those that end goal is compounded, right? So payments problems are compounded by the number of countries. Compliance problems are compounded by the number of countries you're trying to serve. Fraud mitigation. And so the challenges of scaling a specific business like us is that you're literally solving these problems, sometimes country by country or region by region. And so being able to find the right partners, create the right architecture, create the right operational flows on the ground is basically what we do every day. And then in a lot of these countries, there's also not infrastructure you can easily tap into. For example, paying your taxes, right? Today, you can go online and pay that in the US, but in a lot of these emerging markets, we have teams on the ground that are literally walking into these agencies with pens and paper. So how do you take all of those flows and yet hide it away from the end user? These are the challenges that comes with the scale and growing the company. But I was just also highlighting that I wouldn't have it any other way. It's exactly what makes it fun. Every day is a new challenge, a new fire. So we're super excited to go on the journey.
Yeah. So as a startup, how do you get people to buy into the vision and come to a startup when there are lots of other options out there? What is it that you used to attract the right talent?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think, Jeff, authenticity comes through, right? Where people can understand what your intentions are. And I think it's fine to really own it, whatever it is. And it could be as simple as we see a big opportunity and there's $30 billion here to capture that nobody is capturing, right? But I think it starts with that. It starts with the why and we being authentic with ourselves. And for me, it's really a story of impact and it's a story of opportunity. I'm able to really tell that story of just how impactful we can be. And, I mentioned how folks are taking care of 5 people on average. And I think about emerging markets and I think about what can really lift us up. And I think remote work is one of the best things. It's not aid. I think it's really all these brilliant people working. So we tell that story, but we also tell a story of there are billions of dollars, trillions that are being moved. And it's so inefficient. And whenever there's inefficiencies, there's opportunities. And so that's of impact combined with real opportunity to capture market value. It's usually what helps, right, get people to buy into it. And so I think it's that story over and over again. And, eventually you'll find the right set of people. People are in different parts of their lives. They're looking for a little bit of more impact. Some people are looking for a little bit of autonomy. So we're able to just make sure that the matches are right. And that's usually how it goes. And I think every time we also are able to achieve any significant milestone, it gives confidence to the current employees. And they in turn give referrals to other great people to come join them as well. So that's basically my strategy, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. I absolutely love businesses that make money and have social impact. And I think both of those are equally important. And, you definitely have that social impact in your services. What was the driver behind that? And then what are some stories that maybe stand out to you?
Yeah. I think for me, for the longest time, I believe that I've been a beneficiary of America and I've lived my version of the American dream, right? Think about a kid from Ghana at 17, all of these things. But I also think a lot about the folks that I went to school with, right? There were others that got the same opportunities. And the barrier, Jeff, was they couldn't afford a plane ticket. The barrier was, they had a partial scholarship versus a full scholarship. So I think about that and I think about just what would happen, right, if all of those folks are able to get the same opportunities, but instead of leaving their countries, right, they can live their version of the American dream right where they are, right? Like if you're smart, you should be able to tap into that, just like a kid in Wisconsin would, right? If you're in Benin, you should be able to do that too. So I think this is the big thing that I realized. And quite frankly, after working in the US space for 10, 12 years, I just always had a calling of, hey, why don't you try to go back home and do something impactful? And with my background, I could have done something in banking or anything else, but I just thought, what better way to build a company but focus on people, right? And so that's really, I think, the biggest why. And then you get to do so with incredibly brilliant people and fight all these battles and build something big. Why not? So that's sort of the thought process for why even go on a journey like this.
Yeah. Any specific challenges in building a business with a strong social impact?
Yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, my view is businesses, exist. And, especially if you're a non-profit business, you have to make sure that you're combining that with building a business model, generating real revenues. And so I think there's just more conversation to be had around how those Venn diagrams can intersect and that it's okay. And so finding ways to basically achieve those impactful goals, but also building a sustainable business, I think is a challenge that I feel like most people don't think through. And the way that I think about it too, for example, today, money transfers that are going through things like Swift, people are losing anywhere between 5 to 7% of their incomes through fees. So you can come in and capture even 2% of that for yourself, and it will still be very impactful, right, for the end user. So just making sure that you're understanding the breadth of the problem and anything that you can do to even cut that in half or cut that by a third is a good thing. So I think that's that. And the reason I'm mentioning this is a lot of the times there's issues with just funding. Okay, I have this really big social impact agenda that I want to pursue. How do I get people to fund me, or how do I get brilliant people to join so that I can pay them? And I think ultimately, if you're able to marry that with just building a great business, you will be able to hopefully attract, venture capital, or, the brilliant people that you have to pay around the world to help you with the dream. So I think that's where a lot of the calculation has to be done. But what I know is people do want impact, right? People want to join a company that is impactful and rewarding. So that's not an issue. It's just, how do you sustain those people? How do you sustain yourself? And how do you build a big business is where usually the issues are.
Have you had outside investors that, one, either really liked the fact that you had the social aspect as well, or have you had other ones that maybe looked at the business and thought it wasn't a serious business, more like a nonprofit or charity, and didn't want to invest because of the social aspect?
Yeah, we honestly know.
That's good.
I like to describe myself as a social capitalist, if that's a thing. But investors are in to make sure that we can make outsized returns for them, and we focus a lot on the business model, and we focus a lot on how we're building a profitable business, sustainable business. We were profitable even as a young company in December, end of December last year. So we basically show that this is a great business, period.
Yeah.
And we tag along. By the way, you get to, help build a great business. And these are all the impactful things that we're doing along the way. So we haven't really had that problem because, again, we're building a sustainable business that can have a great impact, but can also yield good results for everyone.
That's so good. And just that those two things are not mutually exclusive. Doing great things in the world and building a solid, profitable business, you can do both.
It's not, and I mean, some of the world's leading companies, it's just a matter of perception, are doing great things in the world, and they have the biggest market capitalizations. So I think it's just, I think it should be much more normalized, generally, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you founded Cadana with your college roommate. How has that partnership evolved over time? And maybe what advice do you have for others that are considering, co-founding a business with a friend?
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one, but because on the one hand, it sounds like a bad idea, right, Jeff, to be like, go into business with your friend, like, but on the other hand, I think a prerequisite of a great partnership is just trust. And
yes,
what better way to have that than with someone that you know? So I think folks should take what I'm about to say with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's just been an absolute pleasure, doing something with someone that I know and being able to trust. And I actually think a big part of the success of the business is literally because of the relationship we have, right? Because we're able to really get objective very quickly. We're able to put our personal feelings aside. We're able to debate things, and we know that we're all coming from a good place, So I think a lot of those kinds of problems go away. But most importantly, my co-founder, Amir, is one of the most brilliant engineers like I've ever met in my life. So there is a fit. There is a lot of value that he's bringing, more than you would think, right? And so when you have that beautiful thing where this person is bringing a ton of value to move something forward, and you trust them and you're able to have a good relationship with them, magic really happens. And so my advice, just given what I know, is kind of what I said earlier, is maybe I will change my mind soon, but I bias towards getting a co-founder because I think it's a very tough journey. I think it's a very long lonely journey. And for those reasons, it's just nice to go through. And the other thing I say is, we do have a support system around us, right? Your employees can be a great support system. Your spouse is a great support system. I think it's nobody quite understands you as clearly as your co-founder. It's a very unique way of just looking at the whole pie. And so I was fortunate. I met Amir 12 years ago. I was coming from Ghana to Iowa. He was coming from Pakistan. So I told you the story about the cornfields and the taxi ride. As soon as I got who do I meet? This kid. We ended up being in the same class, physics and computer science double majors. We're the only double majors in physics and computer science in our school. So we spent a lot of time in classes. And then when we finished graduating, I started at Goldman. He started at Deutsche Bank. We were roommates actually up until November last year when I got married. So it's just someone that I've gotten to know so intimately. So
that's
just
awesome.
If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I think sometimes we find those people in life that are just like family, and that's amazing. Two completely different continents, backgrounds, and you meet in Iowa, and now you're impacting the entire world.
Right, and I think it's the beautiful story of just we are going through these life experiences from these different places, but there's a common thread, right? And, the things that he went through at Pakistan and the things that people there are going through is exactly what the people in Ghana are going through, right? So those common threads, I think, allow us to really think about the business in a much more global way. And then we understand the perspectives that each of these different parts of the world are bringing together. And I think it's a powerful thing for us. And so it'll be great to see a little bit more of that over time. But I think for us, we're just excited of just how everything played.
That's great. Well, thinking about entrepreneurs in emerging markets, looking to solve financial challenges or other technology challenges, what key pieces of advice would you offer based on your journey and experiences?
Yeah. And you mean like folks literally on the continent or?
Yes.
Okay. I think the problems are, at least what I see is a lot of the problems are infrastructural in nature, right? The railways haven't been built yet. And so we can't build the trains if we are not really laying down the tracks, right? And so I think that is a problem, but that's also an opportunity. And so I think I generally love to just think through what are these core infrastructural problems and then aggravate towards that. But the beautiful thing is there's just a lot of problems, a lot of things to solve, and that means opportunity. So I'm just super excited generally about just entrepreneurship, especially entrepreneurship in emerging markets. There are obviously some bottlenecks just around being able to secure funding or being able to get the right partnerships and how do you get started. But we're also beginning to see, for example, a lot of venture capital firms locally springing up in these parts of the world, supporting those local systems. So, I think all of that will come together beautifully. But for anybody, I think thinking of just starting something in those regions is hard. But I think with that also comes a lot of opportunity to build something very meaningful.
Yeah. So what's next for Cadana? What does the future look like?
Yeah, we think that ultimately payroll is going to be like sending a text message, right? We think it's just going to be embedded everywhere. I mean, we think that it's not crazy for Bill.com to have a little tab that says pay your people around the world, right? It's not crazy to have all of these different, consulting companies, Deloitte, Accenture, embed more and more features to help their customers. And so a big part of what we are really thinking through now is we've built all of this infrastructure. How can we expose this infrastructure, right, as APIs or as primitives for others to build on top of? And so our goal right now is to think of, can we be the Stripe for global work? And can we be an enabler for others to really embed payroll in different use cases and workflows. And so we started that journey. Today, we support some of the world's leading talent marketplaces, right? They've built these big platforms. You can go there and find talent, but oftentimes you don't have the capabilities to pay them. And today, a lot of those folks are using our APIs to power those experiences. So what's next for Cadana is how to expose these capabilities to platforms, and then how do we make sure that payroll can be as ubiquitous as possible.
Nice. Where can people learn more about you and about Cadana online?
Yeah, the best place to learn about Cadana is on LinkedIn. We are Cadana on LinkedIn. Myself, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. We're always looking to partner, and we're always looking to share thoughts. And so just reach out to me, reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to move forward. But we're just super excited. I think it's a big kind of demographic shift as well with the young people in emerging markets. We see that a lot of US, UK, European companies are waking up to the idea that talent is everywhere. And then we're just happy to help anyone that is going through that thought process. And if they ever need help, we're also happy to help them with that software.
Outstanding. I love the business model and have absolutely felt the pain of paying people internationally as an employer. So, you're providing a very valuable service on both sides for the employees and saving them fees, and for the employers, keeping us compliant and making payments easy. So
100%. 100%. Thank you. And thanks for just giving me a platform, Jeff.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being on SaaS Fuel. Thanks again, Albert, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. I love seeing someone build a business that provides a much needed service and improves the quality of life all over. You can learn more about Albert and Cadana at cadanapay.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Full episodes, video episodes, shorts, training, lots of stuff over there. It's at Champion Leadership Group is our channel on YouTube. Thought leaders share. Are you one? I know you are. Share this episode with a fellow founder who has an international team or who should consider it. Who should do that? All of us. Everyone who shares this week gets a payday piñata. Each payday, gather your team for a fun whack at this piñata filled with candy, confetti, and surprise gift cards. Compensation has never been this sweet or entertaining, kind of like Cadana Pay. Join us next Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, where we keep the team conversation going with my guest, Jordan Burton, co-founder of Talgo, who provides a proven, scalable interviewing system for radically improving your hiring outcomes. And the next Tuesday, we have founder Amarpreet Kalkat, founder of Humantic AI. We'll be talking about the role of AI in sales today, and more specifically, buyer intelligence. They're doing some amazing things over there. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey. Remember, Shark Week this week.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.